Okay, with Richard Bazley, Censure is the short film. It's 39 minutes long, and it's from the Black and White Film Festival. So it's got a certain experimental kind of vibe to it. It's 39 minutes long. That would be a red flag for me for many reasons. But this film is amazing. It really works well, and it kind of just has a really nice pace to it. So I'm assuming the film's doing well, Richard.
It's doing incredibly well. It's won over 40 awards already. And as you said, interestingly, about the black and white being a red flag,
It's more about the experimental quality and the length, the 40-minute length.
Yeah. I had several people say, "Oh no, don't cut it down," and not having seen the film. And we put the film together. The script, the pages, I think it was under 20 pages. So obviously we added a lot of stuff in filming it because there's a lot of music in it. There's a great score by Noise in Your Eye. And as we had plenty of footage. As we were putting it together, we looked at cutting it down to half because it's much easier getting it into festivals if it's under 20 minutes. And I knew that. But I've also worked on a lot of big films, got a lot of experience, and this was one of the first opportunities where I had control of the film and tell the story that I wanted to tell. And when we started cutting it together, I knew that if we had cut it down or done it, even a 20-minute version, it would have been literally half the film it should be. And so I stuck to my guns. I said, next film, which we did, we'll do under 20 minutes. We'll make sure. But this one, this is the film that I want. Because when you get into big budgets, millions of pounds involved, you're dictated by so many factors due to investors and executives. And there's so many great films that years later they have to release a director's cut, like a Ridley Scott film. Obviously he can, because years later he's made it big. So there are other projects where I've been put under pressure to change characters, to do this or do that. And I knew this was my baby. So I took it and run with it. And if you want to be crude, I put the fingers up and said, this is how I'm going to do it. And I was able to include one of the greatest actors, his voice anyway. And I'm a huge fan, Tom Conti. And I was amazed that he agreed to do it as kind of a favor, because I was trying to get him in a film years ago. And again, the execs were like, oh, he's had Oscar nominations. He was big years ago, but Hollywood has a short-term memory.
Yeah. But Hollywood has a memory of that if the actor can sell the product, it's supply.
That's right. So there's so much pressure, and you have to go with what's current and what's new. It's because a lot of the executives, I will be blunt, are lazy and they don't know you better. So they're afraid of their jobs, so they don't take risks. And one of the greatest films I worked on happened by default because the executives were out of the picture, and Brad Bird made The Iron Giant, and I was a lead animator on that. Yeah. And the only reason he was able to do it because Warner Brothers was in disarray. The executives were looking away. A film had just come out, The Quest for Camelot, which bombed. It was $150 million. It bombed.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't know what to do. And Brad came in. They slashed his budget. When I say slashed his budget, it was still like 80 million, but he was a bit fed up at the time. And he created an absolute classic. Now, here are red flags. It was based in the 50s. It refers to a nuclear bomb at the end. It has all the things that you shouldn't be able to do in a kids film.
Yeah.
Well, when I say kids film, actually, Iron Giant is not a kids film. It's just a great film that, like the old Disney films, includes everybody. So that was a great inspiration. Working with a guy like that, Brad Bird, who sticks to his gun, a great filmmaker. My God!
So it's funny that you mentioned. Well, one, people can. There's a book on I don't know the specific book. It was a book on the history of Disney, and they have a whole chapter about what you just described about like how that film got made. And the whole company was in disarray until Katzenberg came aboard, and he gave him the freedom. But Brad Bird comes up in the podcast a lot because of other animators worked with them, and this guy must have an amazing reputation because Wall-E's an amazing movie. Ratatouille is an incredible movie. Yeah. He switched that movie halfway through.
He did. That's right. Right. He pulled it together. Yeah.
and basically Inside Out. He was a creative, like basically The Incredibles, which I've seen many times when you
Yeah,
have children. So basically, yeah. So like he keeps coming up, so he must be doing something right.
He does, but it's been a massive challenge for him, I know, because originally he was too outspoken back in the day at Disney, and he was actually fired. And I remember a friend of mine describing how he was walking down the corridor, kicking one of those water bottles, making out of a racket in frustration because nobody would listen. So it's so interesting that he was fired, and then he had that journey to Warner Brothers and then to Pixar, where John Lasseter picked him up. And then when they were taken over by Disney, he was again working for Disney. So it's kind of ironic, but he was right. So no, it's good to have people like that, great filmmakers. And he was an animator like me too, himself.
And he basically made the best Mission Impossible movie, directed the Ghost Protocol. So let me talk. So let's go back for a second, because you're an animator by trade, and now you're doing live action, right? So you have a vast experience being an animator, The Illusionist, other movies like that, Eight Crazy Nights. You did some, you do storyboards. I'm very familiar with Doc McStuffins. So you were the storyboard artist for Doc McStuffins.
I did some on that. Yeah, freelance. I did freelance on some of that. I got frustrated with doing kids' storyboards, but I'll get into that. I started out on Who Framed Roger Rabbit as an in-betweener, and by the end of the film, it was only 6 months, amazingly, I was being thrown some scenes to animate. They were so desperate to get it done. But it was, trial by fire, but there was no way that they could take me to Disney in America when they closed the studio down, because I wasn't experienced enough. I hadn't studied animation at college. So I went and worked at Don Bluth Studios in Ireland for about 5 years and became a lead animator. And only at that time, when I talked to Disney again, did they say, yeah, we can bring you in now through immigration, because they had to prove that they couldn't hire an American to do the same job. So I got to a level. So they hired me on Pocahontas on John Smith. And I worked.
You animated John Smith in Pocahontas.
I was one of 10 animators. The lead animator was John Pomeroy, who had been a partner in Don Bluth Studios in Ireland, where I had been working, although I hadn't met him at that point. So that was an amazing experience. And then I'm skipping through this because I want to talk about the live action stuff pretty quickly.
No, I know you're just. Basically, you come from this vast world, and you have experience, and you probably had a career in basically.
So Hercules, I was a lead animator on Hercules. And then, also, went to, I pitched The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, the book, to Don Bluth in Ireland, but he passed on it, saying this is just a featurette. And obviously it's a very slim book, but I knew there was potential. So when I was at Disney, I got a call from a friend, and they said, they're working on it over here. I said, you're kidding? She said, come on over and meet Brad Bird. So I met with Brad Bird, and he talked me into leaving Disney, which was a huge thing. But back in the day, we were in demand, so the money was so damn good. I took that helped. So I went over and worked on Iron Giant, this film that I'd originally picked. So at least I was a part of it, and a sequence director, on that film. Then after that, it bombed. Toy Story came out for Pixar, and after Toy Story came out, it was the beginning of the end for classical 2D animation in Hollywood. Yeah. It's along. So they closed Warner Brothers Feature Animation, and I had a choice. I had a house in the hills, a beautiful house. It's worth a couple million now, I think. I wish I kept it longer, but I made a good chunk of money. Not that much, but I made a good chunk of money. Yeah. And my wife wanted to go back to England, so I was able to buy a house here, put money into business, and started Bazley Films. Still in animation at that point, but I'm going to fast forward. I got. For many years, the 2D animation was dark. There's hardly any. So I did CGI as well, which for me didn't excite me in the same way. I did some work on Harry Potter, but I was a technician of one of hundreds of people at computers, and I didn't even meet the director. So that wasn't for me. And then freelance suited me I was doing a lot of storyboard work for companies in Ireland, in Europe, in Australia, and America. And I was still going back and forth to America for about 20 years. And got to direct a TV pilot called Lost Treasure Hunt, which got 2 Emmy nominations. So that I was directing that. I was directing animated commercials, so I was directing more. But the storyboards in animation, I was frustrated at the quality of kids' TV series. There's one or two good ones, but most of it is fodder. So I wanted to make my own films. I loved live action. And I thought, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try this. I wanted to be a Disney animator. I did it. I now want to direct live action films, and I'm damn well going to do it too. So I started chipping away at live action. It's like that thing, no film school. I learned on the job. So I pitched an idea to Bath Tourism about this Roman soldier that comes out of the waters and is resurrected for a promotional film. And long story, they went for it. And I went on the shoot. It was my first live action shoot. We had a whole crew there, and so literally I was learning on the job, but it's the best way, absorbing it all. And then, actually, during this time, I had teamed up with Gary Kurtz, producer of Star Wars, Dark Crystal, American Graffiti, and we formed GBK Hybrid. And we had a number of projects, one animated feature, but a number of live action features. So I was able to pick Gary Kurtz's brains. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Bless him, he passed away a few years, and I miss him hugely, but a huge influence on my life. So I chipped away at the live action projects. We developed a number, but with big films, they take a long, long time to develop and convincing the executives, packaging them, putting them together. And after Gary passed away, I had a couple projects fall through, and I'd met with a great DOP called John Fry and said, excuse my French, bugger it. Let's just go at it and make a film. Let's just do it. You've got all the kit. We've got the know-how. I worked with this fabulous writer called Neil Basson, who's been developing a number of scripts for me. I come up with a very basic idea and bounce them around, and he formulates them into a terrific story. So, Censure wouldn't be what it is without the basis, the foundation of what Neil did in the script. There's some additions and changes, but if you've got a good writer, they're like pure gold. Because I've read a lot of scripts, and there's some great screenwriters out there, but there's a lot that aren't. So I'm very lucky to have found him. So I said to him, I had this idea during lockdown, and it was we had all these restrictions, and I was like, I had this idea. I got this chap who. All these voices were off screen. He was like losing his mind. So I talked to the screenwriter, and he came up with the script. And as we came out of lockdown, I said, you know what? I still like this idea. Although we don't have those restrictions, I still want to work with that idea. So Neil developed it more. And we put the pieces together. I pulled in Adrian Chivers and Daniel Penne, who are part of a group called Noise in Your Eye. And they have a whole ensemble of artists, would you believe, including Nick Mason of Pink Floyd on the percussion and lots of others. I wish I could remember them all now. But he had a body of work from the last 10 years. I'd listened to a CD, and they put it onto a CD. And I said, this is film music. It's amazing. So when it came to Censure, I said, are you interested? And he said, yes. And he was able to, instead of having to do a whole score completely from scratch, he was able to adapt and tweak and rearrange. And that's what you hear in Censure. And that's why the music is just so phenomenal. That's just not a few months' work. That's a decade's worth of work condensed in there.
So let's talk about Censure for a second. Thank you for that story too, because this is kind of your third act, I guess. Your third career in a sense, right? So, which is amazing. And I'm assuming you're doing these shorts, like you have another one that's in the festival circuit to lead you up to making feature films.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I've got one that I developed with Gary Kurtz called The Chimeran, developed with Gary Kurtz and Paul Goodenough. And we developed that for a number of years. And there's some comics that were in heavy metal based on it. So we've got the IP and the property, but it's been taking a while to. We've got another top producer on it. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it yet. I'd have to get his permission, but he's up there. So they are there, and I will be using the leverage of the awards and the recognition from these small films to get some of those features going. I've got another one it's called George and the Dragon, but it's nothing to do with the actual George and the Dragon. It's actually based on my grandfather, who was a Cornish champion wrestler.
Yeah.
And he was a champion, and he was very poor, very poor. And they would have all these wrestling matches. Now, back in the day, before television and before, or even radio and all this stuff, you would have hundreds in Cornwall at an event. You would have hundreds, if not thousands, I think, people turned up to these events. Cornish wrestling is now down to a handful of families that are doing it. So it's a bit like mixture of judo and martial arts. They have these jackets. You have to throw them onto their back and pin them down for a number of seconds. So my grandfather went. He hardly went anywhere, but he went up to London Palladium and had a match with Yukio Tani, who was a Japanese grand martial arts fighter, and he had a match with him, and somehow I think well, I don't want to give the story away. It's not like a Rocky story where he wins right away. There's a twist, and he used a technique that technically wasn't allowed, the Japanese guy. And in my story, we have a rematch, and it takes place by some ancient stones. But I'll leave it at that. It's really mystical. It's a wonderful story, and it's also about it's a drama too. So we take the story of his family and why he's wrestling to bring money in on the side, because he was a labourer. So we've elaborated a bit. So that is probably it's a period drama, and they're always hard to sell. So I do need to build up a reputation with the smaller films to give me more clout with some of the other films, So,
I want to point out that whoever's doing, if it's you or somebody else who's ever doing your promotional, is doing a fantastic job. Like, you go to your websites, your Censure website, you go to your personal Instagram feed, like you're showcasing your work, and you're also giving testimonials to who you are. And
that's wonderful.
Career,
Thank
right?
you. So I did work in advertising for a couple of years, and I did publicity.
Well, you can tell because you're doing a fantastic job.
Exactly.
I would use because I obviously interview a lot of people who make short films. I would use your promotion as a template of what other short filmmakers should do. So
that's fantastic. Well, the thing is, there's so much more promotion than when I was at college or doing publicity degree up in Liverpool. You didn't have podcasts, you didn't have Zoom meetings, you didn't have Twitter, or you didn't have the internet. So to me, it's like, my God, it's I don't think people quite realize how amazing it all is. And I like to write articles, and I put them up on LinkedIn. I've got a number of articles there because a number of people said to me, you should write a book. I thought, I haven't got time to do that. But I thought, if I chip away and do article after article, there'll be a good chunk of a book there written.
Yeah, well, 100%. It's like or even podcasts like you're doing now, right? The more you talk, and the interesting thing is that, like, even 10 years ago, you would have to, like, you're talking about technology. There's no Film Freeway. Like, you would have to send in your DVD to every festival individually, right?
20 years ago, when I moved back from LA, I did make an animated short. I don't promote it a lot yet because I've been on the pushing the live action stuff. But it was an animated short I did in Flash, and it was very crude at the time. But I did a short film. I got it some sponsors, and they had to spend $8,000 to put it on film, to qualify it to go into a theatre at Lamley's Theatre on Sunset in LA to try and qualify for the Oscars. Now, it didn't, but it was a learning experience. And when I got back, I had to make all these videos on those old U-matic types. They're like sizes of bricks. So by the time I had made a load of those and sent them off, and then you're bound to get rejections. Like, although I've won over 40 awards for Censure, you have to apply to a lot to win a lot. So I've put out now. I couldn't have made a couple hundred U-matic tapes and sent them out because they cost a fortune, those U-matic tapes. Then you've got to post it to different parts of the world. Yeah,
I was doing festivals back then. It was like a completely different world, right?
Completely different.
DVDs and how to have a PO box and
horrible.
It's so easy.
So I entered it into a handful of festivals and got disillusioned and thought, sod that, I'm not spending all that money. But with Film Freeway, you put it up on, you upload it once. and you click away. It's fantastic. So I'll give Phil. I get on very well with the people that run that, so I'll give them a good plug. Brilliant platform. I love it.
Okay, so let's talk about Censure for a second. Well, the first question, why black and white?
Well, as you say, because black and white isn't always. Sometimes some people are turned off by black and white, but it's becoming more prevalent. And if you see Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, that's in black and white, and Roma, which is an amazing film by Alfonso Cuarón. Brilliant films in black and white. And I enjoy them. I must have, years ago, I was a bit less likely to, but I enjoy black and white films now. But I wanted this whole world is quite dark and oppressive, and he's feeling closed in his own mind. So, and it was a cold time of the year here in England, and it was a good time to shoot it. So it felt right, and I knew there was this moment. I don't know if should give much away.
I was going to ask you, can we give away?
Yeah,
the
there's a dance sequence basically where he comes out as himself. Let's say that, and it bursts into color. And everybody just loves that because it's so much more impactful because the rest is in black and white.
100%.
So that
it shows that when he's himself, like when he's the regular guy that he is, his world is in black and white thematically.
His world's in black and white.
And then basically he turns into like what he wants to be in terms of like his identity, and basically he's in color. So it works perfectly thematically. Yeah.
So that was the thinking there, and it was a great, I talked to John about it, and he was actually totally up for it, the DOP. And the current one, Confines, we've done in color because it felt right in color. Okay. So no, I've done my black and white film there, so I'm very happy about
it. Got that out of the way, right? You got the black and white film out of the way.
Yeah.
So tell me about tell me about the process. Like obviously your lead actor is in every scene, lots of close-ups. Like he's the key to your film. Where did you find him?
So this is another project that sort of fell through, may come back. But I was a director for hire on a film that has been paused. So it was going to be a horror film in Ireland. Would have been a terrific film, still might be. And I saw all these auditions, and I saw Conor Wulfric do this audition, and it was just phenomenal. I was like, wow, my jaw dropped to the ground. And when the project fell through or got paused, I was like, damn. But I parked him in my mind. And amazingly, he's not that far away. He's probably 30 miles down the road here, not that far. So that was convenient. But when I had this idea, I said to the writer, I said, I've got the perfect guy in mind, and sent him the show reel. So he got excited about it. So that's how I found Connor. Then for the other characters who were mainly off screen, Tom Conti, as I already mentioned, I was interested in one of my feature projects. Again, I still might do, and hopefully I can do in the future. It's a project, I won't go into too much about it. It's based on my father who had Parkinson's. It's called I See Spiders. I can't say too much because it was optioned for a while by some Hollywood guys. And I won't go into the details except that I've got it back now, and I'm very, very, very happy to have it back in my hands so that I can control what is basically a legacy film about my father, which is where it should be. So that's good. Other actors in there are Vivian Taylor. So I actually found her online. I did hunting showreels around, and I knew, as it was her voice only, she could do it remotely from Glasgow, and I thought she was terrific. And she can do an English accent, but I loved her Glaswegian accent, the natural accent. And for that scene, it's just hilarious because the word she swears in it, and it works with the Glaswegian accent. And so the funny thing is, Neil wrote the whole script, the whole thing, but that particular scene we did in snippets, and that was the only scene I would say that I wrote because there was a particular type of humor that I've got where she talks about a cream at the end of it. And so that was my dark humor, I guess. So I enjoyed writing that. And then she recommended Elaine Mackenzie Ellis, which is a great Scottish actress, as her mother. And I'm just trying to think if there's anyone else in it. Most of them are off screen. There is
Yeah.
a couple of
But
people
he's
who
he's the key, right? Like it's Connor
he's the
William, right?
key.
Your lead actor.
Yeah, it was Connor William. He changed his name because I think to get his name on a certain platform, that name was taken, believe it or not, even though it's his name. So
Yeah.
he had to get on that platform. He had to change it to Connor Wolfric.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Well,
so that's his name.
it
That's his
happens with
stage name.
actors all the time, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
So basically, so then you like you said, it's 38 minutes long, but it's really kind of like one location. And
yeah,
there's a lot of breathing room in this
yeah,
film. Where like,
yeah.
but I have to say, like, it's a beautifully shot film. Like,
That's thanks to John E. Fry.
Yeah,
Just gorgeous. He is his main. Where he rents out film equipment, so he's got all the kit, but it's all about the eye, you know. And his main bread and butter has been corporate work. But I think he's really glad to have got involved in these films because he's doing things that you don't get the chance to in corporate work.
yeah,
So there's lots of stuff there where he's really stretching his wings. The shot in the tunnel at the beginning where he walks towards camera. It's such a beautiful shot. I've walked through that hundreds of times. Always thought, what a great shot that would be in a film, and there it is. And I live in this village called Box. Real World Studios is down the road with Peter Gabriel's studio. So it's a real creative. It's an unusually creative village. There's loads of artists. There's loads of musicians. There's also Nick Mason lives nearby. Our next door neighbor was married to the guy from Tears for Fears. They're everywhere here. So it's a real creative hub, I think, quite very unusual.
So the film's got a couple twists to it, right? Twists and turns, and like you said, the one when it turns into color, like when he becomes himself, and then in the end, it's like, what the hell? It's like you're watching the film, and it's like this is the last thing you're expecting.
That's right.
In the film, and it's like, what is going on here, right? Like you're just thinking it's like a character study of this guy, and like who, like, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, it turns into like a thriller. It turns into like a crime movie.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable because so many Hollywood films I watch, you know the ending because I've read all the books.
Sure.
Sid Field on screenwriting, Robert McKee's story. I've read them all.
90% of Hollywood films, you know the ending, right?
And
like
Save the Cat. The problem with Save the Cat is that it's so specific. You've got to do this on a certain page, and for me, it's too much. And what was great, the thing is, in this film, people won't know what's going to happen, and it's a surprise. A bit like in Sixth Sense when the ring runs across the room and you realise that he was a ghost all along. It's just brilliant. So I love films like that. There's twists and turns, and I say, I had the freedom to be brave, to do it the way that I wanted to. So that's the beauty of short films,
Yeah, no, it's like I said, there's like it's a pretty like intense film, and like you said, you think it's one thing, and then you take us on a journey. And it's like, oh, that's so sweet, and then all of a sudden you take us on another journey. And it's like, oh, that's so dark.
Yeah,
it's like you're changing the tone.
And what I was delighted about, was thrilled, was your guys from the Black and White feedback.
What did you think of? What did you think about the audience had to say from our festival?
Oh, it was fantastic! It's such a. I'm going to this a live screening on Friday, so a handful of people may come up and say a few words. But that was the first time I'd seen audience reactions recorded. I thought they all had something really insightful to say. Sometimes slightly different interpretations, which is actually okay, because I kind of like. Even my new film, I leave it open to a little bit of interpretation, and it makes the audience work a bit, and it's not predictable. So I love watching the feedback. I really did. So can you give them a personal thank you to them all?
Yeah, no, everybody loved your film. It was fantastic. And so I got to ask you about, thank you for that, by the way. It's like a really felt like a fantastic film. I got to ask you about the location, because the locations, basically, we're talking about casting. Yeah. It's a character in itself, and it's kind of has that kind of older kind of house kind of vibe to it, where you step in and the walls kind of creak a little bit.
Oh, you mean the actual building, which is Ebenezer?
Yeah, where did you
Chapel.
shoot it? Yeah.
As I say, Ebenezer Chapel, and coincidentally, Adrian Chibers, the composer with Noise in Your Eye, that's his house. Well, it's his rental. He now lives somewhere else, but he rents this place out. It's mainly for like bachelorette parties for people to go to Bath, because it can take like 10 people in there. So you've got all these fabulous rooms with quirky furniture, with all sorts of interesting pictures. And we didn't have to get a set designer, or because a lot of people said, "Wow, fantastic set design." It's all there in the actual. It's already done. So that the Buddha in the bathroom is already there. And the bathroom I love, because when I went in and saw it the first time, it's incredibly long. And I said to John, I said, I want Connor, or Aaron, the character, in the bath. His sister, his stepsister, is berating him from outside, berating him, going on and on. And I just want the slow trucking on him, just really slow, with a hum, with like in horror films, and you think, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And John says, "Oh, should we get one with him turning around?" I said, "No, I don't want him to turn around. I want him to look forward, and he can hold his hands up like he's meditating." So I had that scene in my head, and just looking around when we did the recce, we looked around all the rooms, deciding on whose room was which. I also knew about the dance sequence, and I needed space to reveal what happens at the end. I needed a space. So we could film up on the balcony. Now, if we'd done it in a local house nearby or any house, it would not have had the film's cinematic quality. So that house opened itself up to all those beautiful shots, interior shots. So that was a character in itself. And I say, anywhere around here in the village, from the marketplace where we go down that little street where people are twitching the curtains back, John, Dave, sorry, the butcher. As we walk up the hill, he peers out and he's got his the thing in his hand there, and you got the other curtains twitching. We just talked to local people and said, "Can you be in the film? Can you do this?" And same with the one of the opening scenes is just the local shop.
Yeah,
Chris Cunningham, who's a local post office owner here. So he did a few lines. I wouldn't give them any more, but it worked,
And then
one last location, whilst I think of it, up in the hills here is a war bunker. There's a box tunnel which is built by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and nearby in the woods is a war bunker. And I'm guessing, because they used to have ammunitions that come out from this tunnel during the war from an underground bunker, which has 1 million square feet underground, all underground here. And this war bunker, I guess, was to protect it. So anyway, nowadays, nobody uses it except youngsters who go up there and have a few beers in the evening at night or whatever. So I said to them, let's do a scene up there where he's just escaping from all of this, trying to get it all out of his head. But he goes in there, has a few beers, and in some ways, it's his war room. He's preparing for war, so he's there formulating. So that's one of the part of the symbolism of that scene.
And this to go back to your the house location, you have some really cool bird's eye view shots. So you it really that the large ceilings, most modern houses don't have ceilings like that in that house, right? So it's like
the big beams, and
you got some really great, fantastic shots. So it's it's just a really solid film all around. So you were mentioning that you have another film, right? You have another film on the festival circuit.
Yeah, so it's called Confines, and as we put out a lot of this PR and press about the film. It might have been through LinkedIn or through festival. Luc F. Dejang saw the film and he said, "Man, I love your film. I think it's great." He said, "I'm an actor," and he'd been in a lot of things when he was a youngster, Holby City and London's Burning a bit later, but kind of realized that. To raise his family for security, he set up a business, which was very successful. So he took a break for a good decade or more, but he was missing the acting and wanted to come back. And he said, "I'd love to do something with you." So we put our thinking caps on, and there's a place up the road called the Blind House, and it's outside the pub. And it's where they would have put probably drunks or criminals back in the day, probably before they had police, and locked them up. There's a tiny little grill, but it's very dark in there. And again, it was another location I always wanted to use in a film. So I talked to Neil. I said, "I've got this idea about mental health, about this guy beating himself up, and he's imprisoned in his mind, but I want to symbolize it in this box. So he started writing the script and just an amazing monologue. We had very tiny budget, so we could only have a couple actors and a few locations. And so he started fleshing it out. And then I said, you know what? He's beating himself up, but in case, so we just don't have a guy in a room talking for 20 minutes. I want to expand on it, make it look bigger. Can we have a sequence with a maze? So he gets out, but he's still trapped, and he runs around this maze. So I found this place in Wales, in Ross-on-Wye, called the Amazing Hedge Puzzle, and we went and filmed a scene there where he's running down and screaming down around this maze. And then for the final scene, I won't give too much away again, but it takes place at the Cheddar Gorge, where you've got these amazing cliffs. It's an incredible place. Again, not that far away, maybe an hour away. So we shot a scene there. Now, the funny thing is about this film is that it actually snowed the day we started production. And I was terrified because we had a film years ago that it snowed. And because everything was put back and we only had a limited budget, it never happened. So I was thinking, oh, my God, please, I hope the snow doesn't stop the filming, because it looked great. I had to, because I was wearing many hats as well as directing. I was even doing a lot of the scheduling. So I had to pick up Vivian from Bristol Airport. She flew down from Glasgow. Yeah. And as I drove down to Bristol, the snow was melting away. I thought, oh, good, she'll be able to land. Then I thought, oh, damn, I would like to film that snow. But when I picked her up and we drove back to Corsham, we drove back, the snow was still there and settled. And this is a location, I'll tell you, you'll love this. This is Corsham Court. Stanley Kubrick shot scenes, some of the battle scenes from Barry Lyndon there.
Oh, wow.
Right up the road here, right up the road. So that's why I was spoilt for locations around here. And I'll quickly add, there's Castle Combe up the road. They shot Warhorse. There's Laycock up the road. They shot Harry Potter there. They shoot all sorts because it's so beautiful around here. So,
it's So then you got these short films. You're doing well in the festival circuit. You're getting awards. Yeah. So when's the big plunge? When are you making your first feature?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, and that's $1 million
literally, right? Because it'll probably take $1 million. Well,
the lower budget ones at $1 million or a couple million a couple of years away. But I've got one I want to film in Bristol. I can't give you the title of it yet, but it's a micro budget, and as it's a micro budget, it could be well doable within the next couple of years. So that's one of those. I'm just going to have to make that happen, and in the meantime, just keep knocking on doors with the bigger guys. So I've got a lot of great supporters, big producers who've written wonderful letters of reference. Mario Casar, who produced Rambo, Basic Instinct, he's behind me. As is Howard Kazanjian, produced Raiders of the Lost Ark, Return of the Jedi. So I'm really privileged to have such distinguished and producers, behind me and pushing. So and they've thoroughly enjoyed the short films, which are done for a pittance compared to some, say, the Terminator, which Mario produced. But it's amazing to get such compliments from those guys.
And you just, according to my research, is that you just, as we're doing this podcast, you just had a birthday, right? You just celebrated a birthday last week.
I did. I'll tell you, I'm 61. I'm getting I'm in my later years. But you know what? As a director, the great thing is you can carry on till you drop, and you get better as you get older, I think.
Yeah. Clint Eastwood's in his 90s, right?
Sorry?
Clint Eastwood's in his 90s.
Yeah. Right? So, there you go. So I couldn't have made Censure the way I did in my 30s. I couldn't have done. I wouldn't have had the knowledge or experience. I'm not saying. I mean, people can make good films at that age. I mean, you got. I don't know how Spielberg did Jaws at the age he did. Incredible, but that's a genius. But I needed more time to mature.
Oh yeah, most of them do. There are those, but then there's also the burnout factor, right? Like people.
Oh yeah.
they make like 3 or 4 great films, and then they never make, like, look at Friedkin in the 70s, right? Like
That's right.
He made a couple good films, and then he was
did.
never heard from again, right? So
and there's some other I won't say because Brad Bird's done incredibly well.
Oh, Brad Bird, yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah,
he's becoming a legend.
But there's another couple, and Tim Burton, of course, he was an ex-Disney animator as well.
Yeah.
But there's another couple out there that made some big-ish films 20 odd years ago and haven't done a lot since. So it's a funny old business, you know. All you can do is what you do and keep prodding away and keep trying to make. I had somebody say to me, "Yo, you've been very lucky." I said, "Well, kind of, but you make your own luck. You just keep on doing it. If something happens, fantastic. If it doesn't, at least you know you're trying. You know, you've got to keep trying."
Well, I think you grew up in like the Disney, and you have to give credit where credit's due. Like the storytelling in a lot of those animation films are excellent. There's a nuance involved. There's like a really great plotting device. Like it's really the storytelling is fantastic. So you must have picked up a lot of great knowledge.
Like, I mean, I studied. I mean, what's interesting is when I was at Disney and at Warner Brothers, we had courses as well as life drawing courses. We had story classes. At Warner Brothers, it wouldn't happen now, but in between films, in between The Iron Giant and a film called Osmosis Jones, which I animated a character called Drix with David Hyde Pierce voicing, we had about 6 months where they kept a handful of us on. They lay most people off, which is how it works, but they kept a handful of us on and just kind of taught us stuff. We had story classes with Chris Vogler, who wrote The Hero's Journey. He would come. These were free classes that Warner Brothers were paying for us. You know, or we had acting classes. You know, they taught some of the best actors. So all of this stuff you do absorb. And I wrote actually an article on LinkedIn recently called Acting, or about the process of acting. And I mentioned a lot of this stuff about my background in animation and how it sort of affects some of my direction and some of my influences. Because in animation, in the old days, the characters, they would give them what's called business, things to do. So Baloo the bear, instead of them just talking, well, they're singing, you know, but they do stuff. So he pulls a tree out and scratches his back. He lifts a rock and to get an ant, and Mowgli crawls in a bit, and as he releases the rock, Mowgli just about pulls back. Now, that wouldn't have been in the script. These are things that storyboard artists at Disney add. In TV series, it tends to be more literal to the script. So I learned, this is what Pixar did, and why the Disney films are so good. Yeah. They add all these nuances of character in the storyboarding process. So I was able to do stuff like that in the process of making these films. So there are things like, oh, let's try this here. It may not say it exactly here, but let's try this. So it gives me ideas. So all that stuff is all your past and your influences, whoever they are useful for directing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time and candor. I appreciate those last 2 cents, because like it's all about the nuance, right? It's all about the subtle kind of subjective, kind of like subconscious things. And I forgot to mention, but you mentioned the music too, but even your sound design in the film is fantastic.
Oh, thank you so
very
much.
Subtle, very, like I said, full of nuance. It's like, it's just the film, like it's like I said, it's 40 minutes long. 90% of the film is one location. But it works. It's not supposed to work.
You don't feel like that. I know you don't feel like that.
Yeah.
And even I have to say myself, when I sit down and watch it and watch the whole thing, it never feels like 40 minutes. It always feels like it never feels it. So
you got some game. You got some directing game. I'd love to see your feature film. I would love to see your other short as well.
I'll send you a link to Confines in confidence, because it's still in festival. So well, I'll send you a private link.
Well, we do have a festival as well, right? So
absolutely. So, it's coming. It's coming. I'll let me know the date, and it's coming.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your time and candor, and like you're an education for sure. I appreciate it. And let's talk again when we showcase your next film.
That's wonderful. Let me know when the podcast is up. I'll promote it.
Like you do,